Sophie is the newest rescue in a house full of adorable furry friends. How cute. There's definitely nothing horrible hidden under the back porch. Well, I'm sure that Sophie will fit right in, as long as she can ignore the uncomfortable things she finds in the master's private room. Too bad the dogs can't remember anything before being here, or they could share fun memories like playing at the dog park, going to the groomers, or cuddling with their people. Their people. Yeah, they each had a different person before this, right? So what happened to them and how did they end up here? Oh well, they have food, water, and new friends, so who cares? Just remember to follow the rules or the master may take you into the shed out back for punishment. But I'm sure you won't get into any trouble, will you, Sophie? Hello friends, this is Grease speaking. Today I'm covering the long requested Stray Dogs. I started noticing this comic suggested after I did the Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees video. And I get why, because it also has a cuddly cute aesthetic, but is actually a disturbing horror comic. I won't spoil too much, but this comic has been called a mix between Silence of the Lambs and All Dogs Go to Heaven. That should give you a good idea of what you're in for. If you have pets, especially a dog, this one is particularly unsettling and tragic. But even if you don't, the horror speaks for itself. This is one of those comics I won't soon forget. Before we get into the video, I wanted to mention something else. You know I try to focus on lesser known media on my channel. Well, I recently had a few indie filmmakers reach out to me about a project they're working on, and I was blown away with what these guys are doing. They're working on a film called Limerence, a metaphysical rock opera and coming of age story. The director, Isaiah Marcotte, started filming when he was 16 years old and has worked on this film in his spare time for the last 10 years. The hardest part being the animation, which he's done entirely by hand. I've seen some of the animated sequences he's working on, and it's insane. It's more creative than any mainstream film I've seen in recent years. I just love this kind of shit. Creative people making things just for the love of the art. And I want to be really clear here, this is not a paid promotion in any way, and I have no affiliation with the project, other than I just really want to use my platform to promote cool shit whenever I can. At this point, Isaiah has 80% of the film complete, which is done on his own time and dollar. But there's a few more animated sequences left to do, and as you guys probably know, hand-drawn animation is extremely challenging and time-consuming, so Isaiah has started a Kickstarter to try and raise the funds to complete the film. If you want to support a true artist and be part of something really cool, consider backing their fundraiser when it launches on June 28th. They have some really unique perks like early access to the film and album and signed artwork from the production of the animation. I'll put a link to the Kickstarter below, so click the button on their page to be notified when it launches. But if anything, go watch the full trailer and you'll see why I'm excited about this. Anyway, let's get into today's video, Stray Dogs. Chapter 1, Good Girl. In a veterinary clinic, a woman in a red scarf sits with her little yellow papillon named Sophie. They see the vet, and Sophie is clearly scared and shaking. Her owner is worried she's going to hate her after she gets this shot, but the vet assures her that first, it isn't possible for a dog to hate their owner, and second, their memory doesn't really work that well. They typically won't remember things that happened even a week ago. Sophie looks up into the bright light above as the vet says, "Don't worry, she won't remember a thing." This is some ominous foreshadowing of the horrors to come. Next, we see a house out in the country by a busy road. Inside are almost a dozen dogs who get excited when a van pulls into the driveway. Their master enters with a surprise, a new dog to join the family, a papillon named Sophie. The master leaves the little dog to get acquainted with the others who aggressively sniff her. A German shepherd enters the room telling them all to be cool and recognizes the little dog's uncomfort. He introduces himself as Rusty, and for a moment he wonders if he's met Sophie before, as she seems familiar, but the moment passes and he assures her that she doesn't need to be scared. Rusty then introduces the rest of the dogs to Sophie. Victor the Dalmatian, Gucci the Chinese Crested, Henry the Poodle, Other Henry the White Bull Terrier, Aldo a Mutt, Roxanne the Black Alaskan Malamute, Killer the Pug, Imogene a Tibetan Mastiff, and the oldest dog of the bunch, Earl, a Hound. They're all drawn in that charming Don Bluth style, which deceptively drops your guard before you realize what this comic is really about. Rusty, along with the other dogs, takes a tour through the house. They mostly hang out in what they call the sunroom that has a ton of windows and soft cushions. Then there's the living room, kitchen where the master eats, and of course the backyard where they can play and use the bathroom. Roxanne asks Sophie if she had a backyard before, and Sophie says she can't remember. Upstairs, Rusty points out the master's private room, which is locked. They believe this is probably where he keeps his treats. And finally, the bedroom where the dogs all sleep with the master. A little overwhelmed by all of this, Sophie accidentally wets herself. Gucci scolds her and the dogs all wander away, leaving Sophie alone to cry. Rusty comforts her once again, saying it's not bad here and that every dog here is a rescue, but the master would never throw her away like her previous owner did. She crawls under a piece of furniture and falls asleep until the master shows up and gives her some food. He also sees that she's cold and wraps a red scarf around her. The sight and smell of the scarf instantly brings back a horrible memory. Her owner in the red scarf being attacked and choked by a man. She approaches the other dogs and tells them what she remembered, that their master broke into her lady's house and when she came home, killed her and then brought Sophie here. So now you can see what this story is really about. A killer. All the other dogs just call Sophie crazy. Rusty tries to defend her, saying she's just confused, but Earl gets pretty heated, saying this is all ridiculous. If the master was a killer, he'd be able to smell it, and right now all he can smell is bullshit. What a line. The other dogs agree since Earl has been here the longest and walk away. Rusty tries to be nice, but clearly doesn't believe her either. Before they can argue about it more, the master summons all of them to his room to go to sleep. So Sophie's forced to curl up in the room of the man she thinks killed her lady. As she lays down to sleep, the memory comes back once more. In the morning, Rusty tells her that he wants to help her. If the master did something like that, it doesn't hurt looking into it, and if he is a killer, then he'll get everyone out of here. Sophie looks at him puzzled and asks, "What killer? What are you talking about?" And that concludes chapter 1. A great setup, and it only gets more unsettling from here on in. Anyway, let's move into chapter 2, Stay. Rusty tries to remind Sophie about her accusation, but she can't remember anything before she arrived here. The master gets up and lets the dogs out of the room, then stares at some photos. Rusty grabs the red scarf and brings it to Sophie, which finally triggers the memory of her owner being strangled. She asks Rusty more about the master's private room and decides that they should search it for clues. The master takes Aldo out for a drive while the other dogs look out the window in envy. Meanwhile, Sophie and Rusty continue to talk about the private room. Rusty says it's no use, the door's always locked, but Sophie tries to push it open anyway, and to their surprise, it does open up. I guess he forgot to lock it this time. The two dogs enter, and Rusty warns Sophie that if they're caught in here, they're gonna be in serious trouble. They look around the room to find a creepy sight. The room is filled with women's clothing, and there are a few weird items in the room, like bolt cutters, duct tape, handcuffs, and rope, and what looks to be several driver's licenses on the desk. Yeah, this isn't adding up well. Sophie mentions the bad feeling in the room, and Rusty says he really wants to believe her, but the master is so good to them, it's hard to believe he could be a killer. The two are suddenly hit with a jump scare. A coyote stands wide-eyed with its teeth out in the corner, but it turns out to be taxidermied. Rusty points out the master is a hunter and tries to make it clear that this coyote is not a dog. Sophie starts digging through boxes, not even knowing what she might be looking for. Apparently, the master arrived home in the meantime, and he comes in pissed off. Sophie's hidden in the box, but Rusty gets a kick to the ribs and is sent out. Yeah, he really takes good care of you, Rusty. It seems the man has some business in the room, and as he locks the door, Sophie has no choice but to run and hide in the closet. The master sits at his desk, and it seems like he's working out some sort of script, trying out a series of introductions involving the dogs. It's like he's acting out a situation where he uses one of the dogs to meet someone at the park. It's pretty creepy and a big clue as to what this guy is up to. Sophie retreats further into the closet and unfortunately bumps into some boxes that come crashing down. The master opens the closet, and the sight of his feet triggers another of Sophie's memories. Her owner taking her to the dog park for the first time. Sophie's having a hell of a time running around when she bumps into none other than the master. Back in the present, he reaches down to grab her when an even bigger crash sounds from somewhere else in the house. Rusty has broken a lamp, probably in an attempt to distract the master and save Sophie. Well, it works, and the man puts Rusty on a leash, then takes him to the shed in the backyard. The dogs watch from the window and tell Sophie that Rusty is getting punished, implying that something horrible goes on in that shack when the dogs get in trouble. We see a passing of time focused on Imogene the Mastiff, who seems to just stay in the same spot all day. Before bedtime, the master sends the dogs outside to the bathroom. Gucci scolds Sophie for getting Rusty in trouble, and the dogs all start gossiping about it. This is the first time I realized that Victor is missing a leg, but we'll touch more on that later. The master lets Rusty out of the shed, and he's limping with one arm clearly bruised. He asks Aldo what he did with the master while they were out, and Aldo says that they went to the dog park and that they met a lady and another dog. Then they went on another ride where the master took pictures of the lady. Right. Sophie then pulls out a photo of a woman that she took from the closet and asks Aldo if it's the same one they followed. It's not, but at the side of the photo, Roxanne is visibly shook. Apparently, this is a photo of her lady. And that's how chapter 2 wraps up. Chapter 3, Lie Down. Sophie explains to Roxanne that there were more pictures of women in the private room, not just hers, and is determined to get back inside to prove to the other dogs what's going on. Rusty's skeptical that the master is a killer and points out that all they really know is that he takes pictures of women and collects junk. Roxanne speaks up, however, and says that he did in fact kill her lady. Seeing the picture triggered a fuzzy memory of her and her owner cozy on the couch when the man entered, and she can't believe she forgot about it. That butthole hound dog Earl chimes in, saying she didn't forget because it didn't happen, and Rusty tells him to keep moving. Sophie speculates that maybe they all had previous owners and that they forgot them. She tries to think of a way to keep the memories, and Rusty is once again playing defense for the master, causing her to finally snap at him. Just then, the master arrives home and the dogs rush in for food. Roxanne stays outside after smelling something strange, and Rusty and Sophie join her. They find an opening under the porch and follow Roxanne underneath. Victor the Dalmatian is curious what they're doing and joins in as well. At the far end of the crawl space is a disturbing sight. 3 small mounds of dirt, as if something was recently buried here. Roxanne freaks out and starts rapidly digging on one of the spots, while Rusty tries to convince her that they need to go inside before the master realizes, but it's too late. The man finds the open hatch under the porch and shines a flashlight inside. Luckily, the bunch of dogs hid in an empty grave. Hole that hasn't been filled yet. Inside, the dogs are barking, waiting for their food, which causes the man to head back inside. They climb out of the hole and Roxanne starts digging again. Victor can't climb out without help because of his missing arm, and worse, the hatch is now closed and locked, trapping them inside. Rusty and Sophie start desperately digging a new hole to get out and are a little peeved that Roxanne isn't helping them, instead continuing to dig up one of the mounds. Inside, the master notices Rusty and Roxanne missing from the bunch, and in an intense scramble outside, they help Victor out of the hole and out from under the porch. They show up just before the master gets too suspicious, although they're covered in mud. The other dogs are like, "What the hell happened to you guys?" And Sophie screams out that they found graves. Earl immediately rejects the idea, saying all they found was dirt, and tries to downplay the whole situation. But Roxanne found something while digging, a small piece of clothing. The dogs all sniff it and decide they don't know what it is, but Victor actually never looked at it. Once he smells it, he's struck with a terrible memory. He's stuck in a burning apartment building and is rescued by a firefighter, although he suffered a terrible burn on his left leg. I guess we know how he lost it now. After getting patched up, the woman who saved his life decides to adopt him, but tragically she's brutally attacked in her house while Victor is tied up, unable to help her. With this shocking revelation, Victor tells the other dogs they need to get out of this place right now. He remembers the emergency button on the phone and says they can press it to get help. The other dogs are skeptical since they can't actually talk to humans, but Victor assures them that they'll come anyway as long as they call the number. So the dogs awkwardly call 911. Meanwhile, Earl isn't happy about the situation and sneaks off to warn the master. Downstairs, Victor is barking like mad at the receiver. A dispatcher answers the phone just in time for the master to show up. He tells her it was an accident and that his dog accidentally knocked the phone down. No problems here. He hangs up and then silently puts Victor on a leash and takes him out back. The dogs all watch out the window and the master leads Victor towards the punishment shed. The dog desperately rubs his head on the master's leg in a final plea. Then, in a shocking and heartbreaking twist, he doesn't take Victor into the shed, but behind it. And soon after, the sound of a gunshot rings out. The dogs all look out the window in horror, and that concludes chapter 3. Chapter 4, Play Dead. This chapter starts off with Earl as an adorable puppy and the master giving the cute little critter a snack. Eerily, if you look in the background, this is clearly a woman's bedroom. In the present, Earl sits loyally by the master as he eats breakfast and looks at more women he stalked. All the other dogs are staring at him from a distance, looking pretty scared. Earl says just because he looks at photos doesn't mean he's a killer. Meanwhile, the man is putting on leather gloves, preparing a large duffel bag and heading out, presumably for his next victim. Apparently, he hasn't fed the dog since Victor died either. Sophie breaks into tears, believing he's going to kill all of them eventually. Earl is so stubborn he won't even admit that Victor was killed and assumes he's in the punishment shed and defends the master against Sophie's accusations. In the living room, the dogs are thrown off a little when they see Imogen walking around, which is quite unusual for the silent dog. Sophie continues to lay into Earl, exposing the fact that he can't remember what happened before he lived here either, and has likely forgotten his previous owner. The fight is interrupted by Rusty, who says he remembers his original owner now too, and more so that what, the master definitely killed her. The dogs comfort him and decide they need to get the hell out of here. Earl warns them that they better not try to run, and Sophie snaps back at him saying, "Or what, you'll rat us out like you did Victor?" The other dogs are shocked at this realization, and for the first time, Earl seems less confident and guilty. The dogs head out to investigate behind the shed, and do find a patch of dirt that smells like Victor. Earl watches from inside, and as he walks in the hall, he gets a strong push from Imogen when she walks by. Outside, the dogs smell more of Victor's scent coming from inside the shed itself. Maybe Earl was right, he's actually just locked inside. Luckily, the master left it unlocked, and Sophie enters, despite the fear and warnings from the others. She enters, and the dogs watch in concern from outside. Then, Sophie comes out in tears and panic, telling them all to run. Whatever she's seen in there must be unspeakable. She says they need to leave immediately, but the other dogs are curious about what the hell she saw and entered the shed. Inside, Victor's skin is hanging from hooks on the ceiling, along with several other dogs' faces. It's a complete horror show. There's a workbench with several bloody teeth and what appear to be eyeballs, as well as a bloody axe on the floor. The dogs all run like hell, attempting to break through the fence and then resort to digging, but unfortunately it goes deep into the ground. Inside, Earl's curiosity gets the best of him, and he walks into the master's private room. He sniffs around and encounters the stuffed coyote. The other dogs try to get out of the front door, but of course it's locked, and outside, the master is arriving back home. Meanwhile, Earl follows his nose to a cabinet in the private room, and upon looking inside, his memory triggers and he finally is confronted with the truth. The memory consists of the cute puppy Earl and the master giving him snacks in a girl's room. She arrives home and the master kills her while Earl eats up the snacks, none the wiser. He brings Earl home and introduces him to his other dogs, a completely different set. The disturbing reality is that Earl may be the oldest dog here, but he wasn't the first, and the implication is that the master has slowly killed them all off. It also tells us the sheer volume of victims he has under his belt, both human and dog. Back in the present, the master comes up behind Earl wielding a shotgun, and in the cabinet we see what triggered Earl's memory. The heads of all the past dogs, including Victor, have been cut off and mounted as trophies. And that wraps up chapter 4. Let's move into the final chapter, chapter 5, Bad Dog. It kicks off right where we left off. Earl is livid at the realization of who his master really is and is growling fiercely. The master tells him he knows the rules. You never come in this room and you never show him your teeth. But Earl isn't having it. He leaps onto the master and takes a big bite out of his neck. At the same time, the gun goes off and we see the other dogs hiding in the pantry who just heard the bang. Earl comes running out of the room with blood still dripping from his mouth, and right behind him, a shotgun blast fires through the wall. As he passes into the living room, he warns Imogen to run. Then he bolts down the stairs and tells the others the same. But right behind him comes the master. Before he can take another shot, however, Imogen, that beast of a dog, lunges at the master, knocking him down the stairs. He lands at the bottom in a pool of blood, but the dogs don't have time to see if he's dead. They need to get the hell out of here. But remember, they can't get out the front door and are completely trapped. So Earl takes the lead and jumps through the sunroom's window, shattering the glass. He falls onto the lawn with a thud, covered in cuts and glass sticking out of him. I think it's safe to say that Earl has more than redeemed himself at this point, damn. They all make their way out through the window except for Sophie, who wants to go back for her lady's scarf since it's the only way for her to remember. But when she turns around, she finds the master is getting back up. She's frozen in a moment of terror and has a flashback of that day at the dog park. In the meantime, the master has retrieved his shotgun, smashes out the front door, and fires off a shot that hits Roxanne on her back leg. She urges the others to keep going, but with the fast cars passing on the street, they just can't get across. In the meantime, the master moves in on Roxanne, reloading the gun. Just then, Sophie, that little badass, jumps from the window and takes a bite out of his leg. Unfortunately, the man kicks her, and the dogs are left helpless as the cars speed by. Then, in one last courageous act, Earl jumps out into the traffic to stop the cars. He gets smashed by a car, causing a pileup and leaving him crumpled on the side of the road. The dogs all surround him, and Sophie asks why he did it. In his last breath, he simply says, "He remembered," before passing on. The dogs all howl in their grief over the loss of Earl. Meanwhile, one of the drivers makes their way out of the car, asking the master to call 911. Of course, he's standing there covered in blood and holding a shotgun. So all the dogs start barking, trying to warn her not to go near him. She ignores them and walks towards him anyway, but as she approaches, he removes his hand from his neck, revealing the gory wound that Earl gave him, then collapses onto the ground dead. And that is the end of this man's killing spree. Later, we see the police arrive arrive, and it seems that all the people in the pileup are okay. If you look close at this panel, you'll see Aldo mourning Earl as they zip his body up, and in the background, Killer the pug is peeing on the master's body bag. Now that's funny. The dogs are desperate to tell the cops that the guy is a killer, but of course they can't speak to them. However, they brought a canine unit, so the dogs tell the canine where to look, and he leads the officers to the porch where they can find the buried corpses. Despite all the horror, it seems like these dogs are going to be okay. Sometime in the near future, Sophie is running through the park when she runs into Rusty. However, the two don't remember each other, but they have fun playing while their owners talk. Through their conversation, we get the sense that they're good people. When they leave, Sophie hesitates for a moment, and her owners make a joke about Rusty, asking, "Is he your boyfriend? Do you love him?" But eventually they need to leave. However, they don't call her Sophie, they call her Trudy, and that is the end of Stray Dogs. But we can't end it there. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Stray Dogs' prequel anthology comic, Dog Days. In some ways, it's actually more disturbing than the main story because Dog Days is actually recounting all the other dogs' pasts, most of which include their owners being killed and their subsequent kidnappings. There's only 2 issues, and I'll do a quick rundown of each character, starting with Killer the pug. This story is a bit of a cute misdirect. Killer hears someone at the door and believes there's a monster coming. His girl walks in, and behind her is a menacing figure. Turns out that this is not the killer, but his owner's boyfriend, who calls himself the Cuddle Monster when he plays with Killer. It's clear that the little guy adores him, and he wasn't scared of the monster, but excited. Next is Gucci. She has her own Instagram account where her owner posts cute photos of her in a variety of outfits. However, this section ends on an ominous note when the last photo posted on the account is from the sister of Gucci's owner, saying that Gucci and her sister have gone missing and to please contact her if they know anything. Aldo's story actually takes place at the killer's house. He finds a really cool stick, and Killer the pug is jealous. So he goes and digs up what he believes to be his own cool stick and wants to trade. The thing is, it's not a stick, it's actually human bones. Next is Other Henry, the White Bull Terrier. This section mostly features Henry and a cat named Monster that he doesn't get along with, mostly because Monster is always spontaneously attacking him. Then it cuts to the sad night when Henry's dog mom is being attacked by the killer while he's locked in a kennel. Meanwhile, Monster hides under some furniture. Later at the funeral, Monster doesn't understand why Henry is gone. The cat walks over and sadly curls up in Henry's dog bed. Okay, that one's just sad. Speaking of sad, I think Imogene's backstory is really tragic. We see her as a cute little energetic puppy. She's full of life and energy, always making messes and greeting strangers. Just a furry bundle of joy. Then the killer appears one night and takes her after killing her owner. It seems that Imogene was the second oldest after Earl, since all the other dogs are different. Imogene lays on the floor and we see the time pass. It's clear that the tragic event she went through sucked the life out of her. What once was an energetic and enthusiastic puppy is now a lifeless and broken dog. And the worst part is, she can't even remember why. Next up is Roxanne. Her owner wakes up in the middle of the night to a ruckus and thinks someone is breaking in, but it's actually Roxanne who knocked over a vase and is playing with the plant. The woman yanks it from Roxanne's mouth and says that the plant was from Mom's garden and that Mom is gone now. It's unclear to me if this is implying the owner's mom died or her wife or girlfriend died. It depends on whose mom it is, but either way it's pretty sad. She takes Roxanne to the groomers for a bath the next day, and on the way out is approached by the killer and Rusty. The woman can smell something fishy's going on here and rushes to her car to leave, but we already know what happens next. Okay, that wraps up part 1 of Dog Days, so let's tackle the final stories in issue 2. Starting with Henry. Not Other Henry, but Henry, the poodle. This one is also kind of a big misdirect. We see the killer breaking into a house as usual, but this time he gets more than he bargained for. A dog comes out that's not Henry, and this is a ferocious little guy. He bites the killer multiple times, and the woman calls the police. Finally, the killer retreats and runs out into the rain. Kind of satisfying watching this guy get his ass kicked again. While he hides in a nearby alley, he suddenly spots a woman walking her dog. Henry the poodle, in fact, and we can guess what happens next. Next up is Sophie. Yeah, now that I think about it, we never got her full backstory. Like in the main story, Sophie is at the dog park with her owner when she encounters the killer, but this time we see a little further and learn that he brought Rusty along. This is why Rusty thought Sophie looked familiar in the main story. They had actually met. He tells Sophie that he's a rescue and says that dogs who have ladies always get rescued because the master likes that kind. Knowing what we know now, this innocent dialogue is pretty creepy. Eventually, Sophie's owner picks her up to leave and the killer watches them, asking Rusty if he wants to go for a ride. Our next next dog is Earl. We already got a little bit of his backstory, but now we get to see a little more after he arrived at the killer's house. There's a dog named Laney who's saying some very similar stuff to what Sophie will eventually say, asking everyone how far back they can remember. Earl is asking another dog about when they get treats when they find the master in the kitchen getting ready to leave. He's packing up some zip ties, a knife, duct tape, and some dog treats. Right before he leaves, he gives Earl a treat and calls him a good boy. No wonder he ends up being so loyal. And last but not least, we get some backstory on Victor, the three-legged Dalmatian. Apparently, he was not adopted by the firefighter, but the fire station itself. And after a fire goes bad, one of the men is pretty upset and takes it out on Victor, saying it's not the 1800s, they don't need a Dalmatian. But Renee, the woman who saved the dog, assures Victor that this mean man actually loves him. Fast forward to the present after the events of the main story. We see the killer's house run down with the word murderer spray painted on the side. A vigil begins to grow out front out of respect for those he killed. Next, we see Renee's funeral and the disgruntled firefighter from earlier giving a beautiful eulogy. Later, the fire department burns the killer's house down and we get a better look at the vigil outside, which is filled with pictures of the dogs and their owners, including Victor and Renee. And that wraps up Dog Days and the entirety of the Stray Dog series. There's a lot to be said about this comic. It's genuinely a great thriller, and the main characters being dogs isn't just a novelty or a gimmick, it's the perfect tool for this kind of story. I love that they use the real limitations of canine memory as a major plot device. It was used very well here, and it's also just pretty sad, the fact that these dogs can't remember anything. Even the ending is a little bittersweet because yes, Sophie has a nice new family, but she doesn't even remember her old name and forgot about Rusty as well. I should also point out that I had no idea what this comic was about when I first read it. I knew it was supposed to be disturbing, but didn't really know why. I was so naive that I actually thought that Rusty was going to be the villain somehow at first. He just comes off like the typical character in a horror movie that's nice to the final girl, but is later revealed to be the killer. That's how far off I was from the actual story, which was great because I was sucked into the slow reveal as to what was going on. It's also interesting that the targets aren't just the women, but the dogs. I noticed on a second read through that there are no repeat dog breeds, and given that the killer mounted all the dog heads, it seems that he's actually trying to slowly collect every breed. Kind of brings into question whether the dogs are simply a side project to go along with his killings, or if they're actually his main goal. Like I said, there's a lot to talk about here, but what did you guys think? Anything interesting I missed? And did you cry when Earl sacrificed himself? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to check out the Limerence movie Kickstarter and give the trailer a watch. As always, thanks to Kill Me Katie for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And of course, big shout out to my patrons for helping support the channel. If you want your name displayed at the end of every video like these fine people, consider joining the Patreon. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
I guess it's the feeling it's over. I guess I don't know my own pain. I feel so much less as I'm older. It's okay, just don't say